Long ago in 2004, we got the original The Lord of the Rings, The Battle for Middle-earth, and 2 years later in 2006, we got the sequel, Battle for Middle-earth 2. But what exactly changed over those 2 years when it comes to attention to detail? So guys, welcome to my direct comparison of The Lord of the Rings, The Battle for Middle-earth versus The Battle for Middle-earth 2. Two of, if not my favorite, Lord of the Rings games of all time. I adore these games, and guys, there is a huge hole in the Lord of the Rings real-time strategy space that is just dying to be filled. Not necessarily by a Battle for Middle-earth 3, as the game rights to those movies, they're just long gone. But they did make another one back in the day called The War of the Ring that was based on the books, and it was fantastic, and it just blows my mind that they haven't made another real-time strategy game set in Middle-earth since Battle for Middle-earth 2. Guys, that game came out in 2006. That is just money left on the table. But guys, either way, in this video, I'm going to be doing a direct comparison of the original Battlefield of Middle-earth versus its sequel to show you how little things changed from the original game to its sequel. I hope you guys enjoy the video, but guys, let's dive in. Beginning with the campaigns, in the original Battlefield Middle-earth, the campaign follows the events of the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy, allowing players to relive epic moments like the Siege of Gondor and the defense of Helm's Deep. While in Battle for Middle-earth 2, instead of focusing on the Fellowship and the events of the Lord of the Rings, the campaign instead focuses on a new group of characters and their war against Sauron in the northern regions of Middle-earth. And though you can still return to these classic battlefields like Helm's Deep and Minas Tirith in skirmish mode in Battle for Middle-earth 2, they never feel quite as epic as they do in the campaigns of the original Battle for Middle-earth. Another big difference is actually the playable factions themselves, as in the original Battle for Middle-earth you only had 4 factions, those being the Men of Gondor, the second faction being the Hosts of Mordor, the third faction being the Forces of Isengard, with the fourth being the faction of Rohan, which is interesting because in Battle for Middle-earth 2, Rohan and Gondor are combined into one faction being the faction of Men in Battle for Middle-earth 2. Another huge difference between the two games is actually how the elves work, because in the original Battle for Middle-earth, the elves were a trainable unit through the Rohan faction. Whereas in Battle for Middle-earth 2, and rightfully so, the elves serve as their own unique faction, meaning if you want to play exclusively as the elves, you can do that in Battle for Middle-earth 2 instead of having to play as Rohan. But when it comes to the dwarves, and other than having Gimli in the original Battle for Middle-earth, one of my favorite differences is the addition of dwarves as their own faction in Battle for Middle-earth 2. The dwarves serve as a unique tanky faction. You also get to see awesome dwarf locations like the dwarven city of Erebor, which is great. Moving on to the orcs themselves, in the original Battle for Middle-earth, one of my favorite things about the orcs is that they are actually a free unit, meaning as soon as you got an orc pit up, you could just spam orcs to start zerging the enemy team. While in Battle for Middle-earth 2, the orcs still serve as cannon fodder for the Mordor faction, though they're not quite as spammable as they were in the original Battle for Middle-earth, as the orcs are no longer free in Battle for Middle-earth 2. But at least you get more orcs per horde, which is nice. A neat difference I noticed when it comes to the Uruk-hai is that in the original Battle for Middle-earth, whenever you create an Uruk-hai warrior horde, if you zoom in, you can see that they are all equipped with an Uruk-hai scimitar and no shields. So when they enter combat, they actually swing the sword with both hands. While interestingly, in Battle for Middle-earth 2, the Uruk-hai warrior hordes are actually equipped with both the Uruk scimitar and the shields that we see in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But what I find really interesting is that they didn't change the melee animations from the previous game, meaning when an Uruk-hai warrior gets into combat, he still swings his scimitar with both hands, even though he has a shield equipped. Another huge change between the two games is actually how they handle goblins, as in the original Battle for Middle-earth, the goblins are restricted to just the wild goblin caves. While in Battle for Middle-earth 2, the goblins serve as their own playable faction and actually replace the Mordor faction when it comes to Zerg tactics, overwhelming the enemy with seemingly endless numbers of goblins, with also unique units such as cave trolls and half-troll marauders. The goblins, along with the dwarves, have the ability to garrison their armies within their resource buildings, in the goblins' case the goblin tunnels, in order to move their armies quickly across the map. This also aids into the goblins' Zerg tactics due to the cheap unit cost of goblins. But one thing I've always really appreciated about these games is the attention to detail with the production buildings. As you can see by this orc pit, you can actually see an orc on top, stirring up the mud and pulling the orcs out, or with this troll cage, you can actually see an orc tormenting the troll in the cage until he tries to fight back, or even with the furnace, you can actually see them making the iron bars in the furnace. This level of detail is just really cool to see, as it makes the production buildings feel alive, whereas they could have just been static objects in the environment. Another really cool difference between the two games is that, of course, there are hero units in both games, but in Battle for Middle-earth 2, if you're playing the One Ring mode and you capture the One Ring, you can actually create Sauron as an Uber unit. Galadriel as well if you're playing as the good faction, but it's just so awesome to see these guys enter the battlefield, because when they show up, it's game over for the other team. Moving on now to one of my favorite differences between the two games, and that's in the original Battle for Middle-earth. If you had a large army and you told them to move somewhere, they basically moved as a giant horde or mob. Whereas in Battle for Middle-earth 2, you can actually have your armies get into specific formations that you choose yourself, which not only make your armies appear more organized, but also add strategic benefits by choosing how you lay out your troops. Another huge difference between the two games is actually how building your base works, as in the original Battle for Middle-earth, your buildings could only be built on pre-arranged build plots similar to games like Halo Wars. While in Battle for Middle-earth 2, building your base is much more freeform, as you actually have builder units and can actually place the buildings wherever you want. Another big addition from Battle for Middle-earth 1 to Battle for Middle-earth 2 is the addition of naval units in the sequel, because now you can create a fleet of warships and ships that can ferry units across water so you can sneak up behind enemy bases. But one of my favorite differences between the two games is actually when it comes to scale. As you can see here in Battle for Middle-earth 1, this is a Gondor soldier battalion. That's only 5 soldiers. Whereas in Battle for Middle-earth 2, here's the same thing, and as you can see, it's much larger. It's actually 3 times larger with 15 troops. And this is seen across all of Battle for Middle-earth 2, as the armies are larger, making the battles feel more epic, adding a sense of scale that just wasn't in the original Battle for Middle-earth. Well guys, you made it to the end. Thank you for watching my direct comparison on the original Battle for Middle-earth versus its sequel, Battle for Middle-earth 2. And as I said at the beginning of the video, I absolutely adore these games. And as the years tick by, I've given up hope on an official remake or a remaster of these games. And I know that, they have that mod, the Battle for Middle-earth Reforged, that's been worked on for like over 10 years. And I'm losing hope that that's ever going to come out as well. But it just blows my mind that it's been since 2006 since we've gotten an official RTS set in Middle-earth. And that I know we're in the middle of like a resurgence of Lord of the Rings games coming back. We had the recent Return to Moria and the upcoming Tales of the Shire. So maybe on the horizon somewhere, there's a Lord of the Rings real-time strategy game that they're working on that they just haven't announced. But I'll tell you guys what, if any of the people working on that game happen to watch this video, just know that if you make it and it's good, I'll buy 2 copies. I'll buy a copy for every member of my family if it's good, because I'm just dying for a real-time strategy game set in Middle-earth, and I hope it's coming on the horizon. Guys, that's all I have for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to drop a like on it. It helps the video reach new fans, and as I always say, that's always a good thing. And I also make new videos like the one you're watching right now every single week, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future content. But as I said, that's all I have, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.